Welcome students once again to my class of BA Part 3rd English Literature. In the last lesson we had discussed about the poem prescribed in your syllabus paper 1 section A, that is Robert Browning, and we discussed about his very unique kind of poetry in which he had mastered, and that is the dramatic monologue. And we also discussed about how Robert Browning uses this form of dramatic monologue, whereby dramatic is a word which is used because it reflects the imaginary characters in this poem, who is not the poet himself, so the persona who's the character, and because it the character is developed not through any description on the part of the poet, but through a conflict between the opposite thoughts and emotions of the character himself. And it's a monologue because it's a conversation of a single individual, and therefore this is called dramatic monologue. And a question may come on this unique kind of genre, that is dramatic monologue. So in this class today, because the poem is a long poem consisting of around 56 lines, so it's better that we divide the lines and try to understand each part so divided with more focus. So this first part, the first part was actually the introduction, and this is the part 2 where we are now going to study about in detail about the poem. So you need to know that the poem My Last Duchess was first published in the volume of poems which is called Dramatic Lyrics in 1842, and again it was republished in the Dramatic Romances of 1863. And as already mentioned, it's a dramatic monologue, My Last Duchess, and all his monologues grow out of some crisis or critical situation in the life of the principal figure, and embody the reaction of the figure to the particular situation. Thus the present monologue, My Last Duchess, is also a very remarkable piece of character study, not only of the persona who's the main character speaking, that is the Duke, but also of his last Duchess, as you will soon find when we start reading the poem, and the messenger of the neighboring Count, who forms the listener and the interlocutor. Means the reactions which were coming, which are not overtly, means openly told to us, but through the reactions and the answer of the Duke, we find that how this progresses. So something more which you want to know about this monologue, My Last Duchess, is that it is written in 5 sections and made up of rhyming couplets. The poem is written mostly in iambic pentameter, which means that the lines contain 5 sets of 2 beats, the first of which is unstressed and the second of which is stressed. So this is how when you speak, the rhythm is created because of the beats, stressed and unstressed. So this poem has a narrator, somebody who is telling something in a dramatic manner, the Duke, and which it is believed that it was the Duke of Ferrara of Italy who is the protagonist. Because why is the protagonist? Because the poem is told from the Duke's memory of his last wife, the Duchess. So My Last Duchess refers to this wife of the Duke and her death. So the dark undercurrents which surround the event discussed in the dramatic monologue form the main focus of it. Now the Duke of Ferrara, who is the main character, is a powerful, proud and hard-hearted Italian duke of the 16th century, and who has been widowed recently. Widowed means his wife has died, and he intends to marry a second time. So, here in this poem, a messenger has come from a powerful count. Count is an area, how it was earlier described. The geographical area was described in England, who has his estate in the neighborhood, comes to the Duke's palace to negotiate with him the marriage of the Count's daughter. And in this poem, it begins by the Duke taking the messenger round his picture gallery and shows to him the portrait of his last Duchess. The portrait is very lifelike and realistic, and the Duke, who is a great lover of the fine arts, is proud of it. So, let us first read some of the lines, the first 13 lines of the poem. That's my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will it please you sit and look at her? I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. So you'll find that how this poem begins, has a very startling beginning, something which attracts the reader as well as the person to whom it is addressed in the poem, that is the messenger. So the Duke points out the portrait to the messenger and tells him that he alone uncovers the picture and nobody else is allowed to do. And while he's pointing out this portrait to the messenger, through the reaction of the Duke, we notice, we are made to notice that there is an inquiring look in the eyes of the messenger. And the Duke understands it, and he says that I know that you want to know the cause or the reason of the deep, passionate look in the eyes of the Duchess. And he goes on to satisfy his look by explaining to him. So here in this way, Browning turns this monologue into colloquy. Colloquy means where there is this exchange, there is some kind of a conversation. The inquiring looks, particular gestures and movements of the listener here, who is the messenger, serve as big question marks and provide the speaker with an occasion for explanation and self-analysis. So what does the Duke tells this messenger? So you'll find that the Duke first of all praises the painting for looking so lifelike, as if it will come to life. It's so real. And talks about the painter. So who is the painter who has painted? Fra Pandolf. And the Duke asks the guest to sit and look at the work, and explains that he deliberately mentioned the name of the painter because strangers like himself always look at the Duchess's painted face and turn to the Duke, and only the Duke has the right to pull back the curtain and reveal the painting. And therefore the Duke says that the guest is not the first person to ask this question about the look in the eyes created by the painter. So this is how in the first few lines the poet tries to create this sense of mystery, that how the Duchess had that passionate look in her eyes, and how anybody who would come and look at the painting would be mesmerized by that and have a question in their heart as to the look of the touches. So further on, we will find that how um, the the Duke explains to the messenger about the mystery behind this portrait. So, with this, we come to the end of the lesson, and I have purposely kept them smaller so that you can focus on the each line more deeply. So, in the next class, we would move further beyond the line 13. Thank you.